Freeway Ricky Ross is a former American drug trafficker from Los Angeles, California. Between 1982 and 1989, federal prosecutors estimated Ricky Ross bought and sold several metric tons of cocaine. During the height of his drug dealing, Ross was said to have sold $3 million worth of drugs in one day. He operated drug sales in states including North Carolina, Indiana, and Oklahoma. He claims that his most profitable deals came from the Ohio area. Over the course of his illegal activity, Ross amassed a personal financial net worth of just under $1 billion. For a while, he successfully evaded law enforcement with the use of police scanners and voice scramblers. One LA sheriff remarked that Ross's men had even better equipment than they had. In 1996, Ross was sentenced to life imprisonment after purchasing a large amount of cocaine from a federal agent in a sting operation. The sentence was reduced to 20 years, and Ross was released from prison in 2009. Now he's an author, a frequent guest speaker at charitable events, and he even has a Twitter account. The only woman on the list is Griselda Blanco. She was known as the cocaine godmother and was an integral member of the Colombian Medellin cartel during the mid-1970s. She had a net worth of over $2 billion, all due to drug smuggling in and out of Colombia, Miami, New York, and California. She was a ruthless drug lord that took no pity on the competition, ordering over 200 murders during her career. During the 1980s, Blanco was heavily involved with the Miami drug wars, controlling an organization of lawless, murderous gangsters known as the Cocaine Cowboys. Blanco was arrested in 1985, but had no problems running her drug ring from inside the jail up until her release in 2004. The openly bisexual Blanco had 4 children, but 3 of them were killed in kidnappings. After many failed assassination attempts over the years, in 2012, she was shot twice in the head in front of a Colombian butcher shop. Carlos Enrique Leda Rivas was a Colombian drug lord and co-founder of the Medellin cartel. At the height of his illegal affairs, he purchased all the properties on a Bahamian island, running all of the previous residents out. The island, known as Norman's Cay, was used as an all-purpose headquarters for cocaine trafficking between the US and Colombia. His island was equipped with an airstrip protected by radar, bodyguards, and Doberman attack dogs. After being extradited to the United States, he was given life without parole. That sentence was later reduced to 55 years for his testimony against the corrupt Panamanian politician Manuel Noriega. During the trial, it was discovered that his assets were worth up to $2.7 billion. In the same trial, it was also reported that he was a self-proclaimed Nazi and admirer of Adolf Hitler. Gilberto and Miguel Rodriguez Orejuela were 2 of the co-founders of the Cali cartel. The Orejuela brothers were less violent than their direct rival, the Medellin cartel. The drug-dealing duo were much more inclined to bribery rather than violence. At the height of the organization's reign, they were cited as having control over 90% of the world's cocaine market, racking in profits of over $3 billion for the siblings. After the downfall of the Medellin cartel, the Colombian government turned their attention to taking down the brothers as well. They were both arrested in their homes, one hiding in a secret closet, the other hiding in a hollowed-out bathroom cabinet breathing through an oxygen mask. After being extradited to the US, they were sentenced to 30 years each as part of a plea deal to grant immunity for 29 of their family members. Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha was a Colombian drug lord who was one of the leaders of the Medellin cartel. He was known for pioneering new drug trafficking routes through Mexico to the United States. This, coupled with his infatuation with Mexican culture, he was given the nickname El Mexicano. Gacha set up a number of labs in the jungles of Colombia, where hundreds of his workers lived and manufactured cocaine. In 1988, Gacha was listed on Forbes' list of billionaires, citing his net worth at $5 billion. During the decline of this empire, he fled to a ranch in Tolu, Colombia, where 300 national police officers cornered him and his cartel members. Being critically wounded by gunfire, Gacha killed himself with a grenade to the face after watching his son get gunned down by Colombian Marines. The Opium King, Kun Sa, was a Chinese warlord, militant, and drug dealer. During the 70s and 80s, 90% of the heroin in New York City was being smuggled from what's known as the Golden Triangle in Asia. The triangle that spread across Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand was controlled by the 18,000 troops in Kun Sa's private military. His heroin empire was the largest that the world had seen at the time, generating the kingpin a fortune of about $5 billion. In 1988, during an interview with a journalist, he offered to sell his entire drug business to the Australian government for $400 million. The offer was declined, stating they were simply not in the business of paying criminals to refrain from criminal activity. He offered the same deal to the US, promising to stop all heroin production if they paid him $50 million a year for 8 years. The United States answered back with an indictment on drug smuggling charges and offered a $2 million reward for his arrest. Kun Sa surrendered to Burmese officials in 1996, but they never arrested or extradited him to the US. Sa lived in peace for 11 years and died of natural causes in 2007. The Ochoa brothers, George, Juan David, and Fabio, were 3 more founding members of the notorious Medellin cartel. DEA sources told Forbes magazine that the brothers' underworld activity started in 1977. It was then that George had his boss executed, taking control over cocaine exports into the United States. 1983, the family had acquired a fleet of 55 aircrafts, including helicopters. Together, the brothers eventually controlled 30% of the Medellin cartel's cocaine trade, netting them a shared profit of $6 billion. Rather than being extradited to the United States on drug trafficking and murder charges, the brothers systematically surrendered themselves to the Colombian government for drastically reduced sentences. All 3 men served 5-year sentences from 1991 to 1996. George is still alive, living in parts unknown in Colombia. Juan David died of a heart attack in 2013. Fabio was eventually extradited to the United States on drug trafficking charges in the late 90s. He is currently serving a 30-year prison sentence. Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar is the leader of the Indian organized crime syndicate known as D Company, founded in Mumbai, India, after the 1993 Bombay bombings, which Ibrahim allegedly organized and financed. He became India's most wanted man. Currently, Ibrahim is hiding from Interpol and is considered a global terrorist by many nations. The United States Department of Treasury said that Ibrahim's syndicate is involved in large-scale shipment of narcotics in the United Kingdom and Western Europe. According to the United States, Ibrahim maintained close links with Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. His organized crime ring D Company controls 90% of India's drug dealing, but is also known for its counterfeit operations, extortion, and arms deals. Ibrahim was number 3 on Forbes' top richest drug dealers in the world in 2011, with a net worth of $6.7 billion. In order to launder the money, it was being rumored that he was a major contributor to the Indian film industry, known as Bollywood. Although his whereabouts are unknown, many recent sightings and frequent use of his 3 different passports all link him to be somewhere in Karachi, Pakistan. The most powerful Mexican drug trafficker was Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Carrillo took control over the infamous Juarez cartel after assassinating its boss, Rafael Aguilar Guajardo, setting off the city's worst and ongoing bout of criminal violence. The Juarez cartel is known to decapitate their rivals, mutilate their corpses, and dump them in public places to instill fear in the general public, local law enforcement, and rival cartels. He used 22 private Boeing 727 jet airliners to traffic an unprecedented amount of cocaine out of Mexico and into the US. Because of his huge fleet of aircraft, he was given the nickname El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. His fortune has been rumored to be $25 billion. During the mid-90s, the pressure to capture Carrillo intensified among US and Mexican authorities. He would take his private jets to communist nations like Cuba and Russia to seek safe haven. Carrillo decided to change his appearance through a series of plastic surgeries to escape his persecutors. However, during the 9-hour operation, he died of complications caused by a malfunctioning respirator. Both of the physicians that performed the procedure were found dead, encased in concrete inside steel drums, with their bodies showing signs of torture. Carrillo died on the operating table in 1997 at the age of 40. Most men would cower in the presence of the ruthless cocaine kingpin and overlord of the Medellin cartel, Pablo Escobar. He had amassed the most money out of all the previous drug lords on the list, with an estimated worth of about $30 billion, not including the $20 billion buried in different areas around Colombia, known as the King of Cocaine. At one point, he was responsible for supplying 80% of the United States cocaine imports. As a young man, he did petty street scams, sold fake lottery tickets, and stole cars. After kidnapping a city official and gaining an easy $100,000, Escobar knew he wanted to be a millionaire by the age of 22, and he would do anything to achieve it. In 1975, he started developing his cocaine operation. He had an effective policy in dealing with law enforcement, referred to as plata o plomo, forcing police officers to take money or face bullets. Over his career, Escobar was directly linked to the murders of over 1,000 officers, city officials, and civilians. During the height of his operations, he and his cartel brought in more than $60 million per day. He started smuggling drugs through Carlos Leder's Bahamian Island, Norman's Cay, from 1978 to 1982. At one point, it was estimated that 70 to 80 tons of cocaine were being shipped from Colombia to the US every month. He worked hard to cultivate his Robin Hood image by building churches, schools, hospitals, and even gave money to the poor. But in the early 90s, the massive manhunt for Escobar began. In 1993, he tried to escape a police task force by running across the rooftops of adjoining buildings. He and his bodyguard were fatally shot. Pablo Escobar was the richest drug lord to ever exist, and many would say that he was also the most dangerous.